Hello everybody and welcome to this week's worship. Hope you had a lovely half term, whether you were just relaxing at home or whether you were around and about. It's fantastic to be back together again, and also the news that we are staying together all the way through this national lockdown. In a little bit I'm going to talk to you about ways we can help the adults who drop us off and pick us up, but more of that in a little while. Anyway, there might be some bits that to start giving you clues as to what this worship is going to be about. And we've got our wonderful poppies, and I've got an image of a poppy field for you to look at. So I'm going to welcome you to worship. The Lord is here. Great. So just reflect for a moment then about what this lovely humble poppy, the poppy field, represents for you, the things that you think about when you see them. And I'm just going to give you a moment to reflect and think about, what do you think about when you see those poppies? If you're in year 6, you already have a kind of strong sense of this. And then a moment to have that conversation. And year 6, you might want to reflect on some of the poetry that you studied before half term. Okay, so a chance to talk. Three, 2, and 1. Lovely, thank you. So I'm sure you will have, in your conversation, you will have talked about the poppy appeal, and will have talked about remembrance. And for us, particularly this year, it's about having that sense of gratitude for those people who really went before us and gave their service and their lives for the freedoms that we so understand, particularly this year. And the poppies particularly symbolise the First World War, World War One, when after the battles, a sea of poppies kind of sprung up, like the ones you can see on the screen. And they were really looked very much like all of those millions of soldiers and horses and medics who gave their lives for the freedoms that we so kind of hold dear. So I think for me, it's a particularly wonderful, thought-provoking time. My great-grandfather was one of the first over to the Somme, which one of the major battles in the very first part of World War One, and was unfortunately kind of gassed during that battle. But it was almost, in the year 6s will know, it was almost unimaginable really what people kind of went through again for peace and for our freedoms. And so it's always with kind of great respect that at this point of the year, All Saints would be walking down for the Remembrance Parade, which would have been this coming Sunday. And we'd have stood together and walked through the high street with people lining both sides, and we would have solemnly walked down and then stood by the Fleet War Memorial in Gurkha Square, and then as part of that service, very often led by Reverend Mark, we would have had a couple of representatives from school kind of go up to the War Memorial and then place a gift from us in remembrance. And I don't know if you can imagine what's in this box. So I'm fond of boxes, aren't I? It's quite thin, but it's quite a good side, and it's quite light. So very quick conversation. What do you think is in this box? Okay, 3, 2 and 1. Brilliant. So I'll open it for us. So here it is. We're still going to go and place this, but it will, because there's no services this time, it will have to be a little bit later, but it will still go from us. And here it is, and it's beautiful, isn't it? It's really, really beautiful. So our beautiful poppy wreath, and it says in remembrance, and then I will write onto here that it's a gift from us for all those that have gone before us and given their lives. But it's very beautiful. We're also going to keep our moments of silence next week as well. More of that later on. But here was last year in Guildford Cathedral, and our 6s went up as part of that remembrance service. I think that was 2 years ago. And just the whole place was full of just the most extraordinary amount of poppies and our red jumpers. So as we kind of head through, it's really nice to think about a couple of people who served as part of those campaigns in World War I. And here is the first of those soldiers, Lance Corporal William Coltman. So born in 1891 and lived to 1974. And he was a very impressive individual who wanted to serve, was called to serve, and he was called to serve in the capacity as one of these men. So do you want to have a quick look at the photograph and think about in what way William Coltman served in World War I? Okay, and a quick conversation with somebody around you. What did he do? Okay, 3, 2, 1. So if I can just draw your attention to the kind of the mud and the fact that some of these stretcher bearers and medics were literally up to their knees in the mud, and they were bearing the stretcher, carrying injured soldiers from the trenches and from the battlefield, and then carrying them to the hospital tents, and then they would be placed ready to go back, quite often to the Southampton hospital, which is just, you can see from the Isle of Wight ferry, and that's where they'd been taken for tending and recuperation, and hopefully well enough to then be able to return to battle. So, and that's what William Coltman did. So he became a stretcher bearer, and the job of the stretcher bearer was to rescue the injured men from where they fell, often trudging far into the area called No Man's Land, and through enemy fire on all sides. So William was only 5'4", which is quite a bit shorter than me actually, but he didn't let his size stop him. He was well known for carrying the wounded off the battlefield across his shoulders. And most nights he would venture out into enemy lines to see if any of his regiment had been left behind. And here's a sculpture of him which stands and gives you a sense of his duty and his calling. And he did this for 3 years and was awarded the Victoria Cross for his actions on October the 3rd and the 4th, 1918. And the official letter says, this very gallant non-commissioned officer, NCO, tended the wounded unceasingly for 48 hours, so 2 days and 2 nights. He won many other medals too, and yet he never fired a single bullet. So and there's his medals kind of hanging there. And next week, as we come to Remembrance Day and Armistice Day on the 11th, going to let you see some other medals. Mrs. Little has a wonderful collection of medals of her service in the military, and also I will show you my great-grandfather's medals from the First World War. So absolutely wonderful. So I'm just going to ask you now to think for a moment about what we can learn from William Coltman's story. Why have I told you his story? I always choose them for a reason. So why his story? Think for a moment. Okay, and now time to talk. Okay, 3, 2 and 1. Lovely. Thank you so much. So I thought I would just share one more story from the First World War with you. There are millions of other stories to be told, but I've chosen this one because it's really powerful as well. So this is our next person, Walter Tule. Now Walter Tule was born in 1888 and his parents died within 2 years of each other when Walter was just 9 years old, and he was left with his stepmother, and because of the number of children in the family at that time, he was sent to an orphanage, a home for children without any parents. And it was here that he started to play football. And it turns out that Walter was a very, very talented football player. There he is. He was signed for Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, and he became, and this is one of the reasons I've chosen him particularly, he was one of the first black professional football players. And that was obviously a really, really challenging thing to be first. And unfortunately at that time there was nothing around stopping racial abuse, and so actually he suffered a significant amount of racial abuse, but he said nothing. He didn't retaliate, he wasn't rude, he was quite an amazing man, strong and courageous. And so much so that at the time one reporter wrote, "Tule is so clean in mind and method as to be a model for all." A model for all men, and that's one amazing thing to say. He was then signed for Northampton Town Football Club in 1911 for a substantial fee, and he played 111 games for the team, playing the final game in the season of 1915. So there he is. You can just about see him at the back there. And from there, he then went and he signed for the regiment nicknamed the Football Battalion, which was the 23rd Middlesex Regiment. And in November 1915, Walter was sent out to France to fight. Now, he'd been highly regarded as a football player, and he'd been really respected for his ability to play as a team, his integrity on the football field, and very quickly he was equally respected in his battalion. So much so that actually Walter was very quickly promoted to that of an officer, and that is quite extraordinary because actually he was the first black soldier to be promoted to officer, which was very much against what was kind of been seen as normal at the time. And actually it wouldn't happen again in the British Army for another 23 years after he was promoted. So there he is, looking fantastic in his uniform, and he was hugely respected by his battalion. So he was praised for his actions following a nighttime raid into enemy territory. And again, like William, he was recommended for the Military Cross because of his gallantry and coolness under fire. Sadly, he was not as fortunate to be seen through into old age as William was, but actually lost his life in the final few months of the war. So on 25th of March 1918, he was lost, he was wounded and lost to the battlefield. His commanding officer wrote to Walter's elder brother Edward saying how popular he was throughout the battalion. He was brave and conscientious. The battalion and company have lost a faithful officer, and personally I have lost a friend. And this memorial stands outside Northampton Football Club ground, commemorating his life, his service and his part of the fight against racism, which is obviously very close to our heart too. So I ask you the same question then about Walter. So what can we learn from Walter, and why have I offered you his story as we think about gratitude and remembrance? Okay, a moment to think. And then time to talk. Thank you. Okay, 3, 2 and 1. Lovely, thank you so much. So on the 11th at 11 o'clock next week, we're going to record the last post, and you'll hear the words at the going down of the sun, and in the morning we will remember them. It's a moment in the Europe and the nation's history that really is a moment that we stand together, particularly as a school and a nation, at 11 o'clock on the 11th, to remember and feel that gratitude and to remember those who have gone before us. And it really is about thinking around being for the peace, for freedom, being the peacemaker, and that's what the Bible and Jesus commands us to do as well. So this week, as part of the reflection, I'm going to ask you to think about what you can do for our community to bring peace. It might be our school community, it might be you want to think about the wider community of Fleet, it might be thinking about the world. When we did Peace One Day at the end of September, we really think about our commitment, and I want you to think again at this moment. And on the system there are some really lovely little kind of remembrance wreaths, like the one that I showed you earlier that we'll place. And in the centre of that, colour that beautifully, and whilst you're colouring and reflecting, I want to think about what you are going to do to bring kind of peace, to be the peacemaker. So just going to ask you to keep a moment of stillness now. You might want to just look down, you might want to close your eyes. Let's be still and quiet together now. We've been thinking today about how we wear a poppy to help us remember. We also heard about the World War I soldiers whose life made a difference and whose bravery and service is especially remembered by us today. So think for a moment about the lives of Walter Tule and William Coltman. And Jesus called all who followed him to act in this way. And I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and put your hands together. I'm just going to say a prayer for us. For peacemakers and peacekeepers who seek to keep our world secure and free, may God give peace. God give us peace. Amen. Okay, lovely. Thank you so much, everybody. So next week we're going to do something a little bit special around remembrance, and there'll be an opportunity to see those wonderful medals. If you've got any photographs or stories from home about family members that have also served at any point or have kind of offered service, then we'd love to hear of those. You could email those into the parent@allsaints email address, or you could maybe take some photographs and put them onto your seesaw. I'd love to know if you've got any special World War I, World War II artefacts at home, and you could take some pictures of those. We had some amazing ones a couple of years ago. Why don't you have that conversation at home? And that just really brings it alive to all of us. There will also be a chance next week that if you are a member of Brownies, Cubs, Beavers, Guides, Scouts, or one of the other organisations like Sea Scouts, the St John's Ambulance, any of those, Horse Rangers, all of those kind of organisations, we'd love to invite you in to wear your uniform, and so on the 11th, so that we can really reflect what we all do to make this world a better place. So, okay, until then, I'm going to just finish off by asking for your help. So from Friday, we really need to make sure that national restrictions are going to say that no more than 2 adults can be together outside. It's not within the same family, but those people, so family, friends. And that's going to be a real challenge for pick up and drop off. So would you help me keep us all safe and carrying on at school together by just reminding your adults, if you see too many people standing together, would you give them a gentle reminder from us and just ask them to keep our community really safe, because we want to be here with you all the way through until the end of next summer, and that would be a really great help. So okay, thank you for that, and I look forward to next week. Next week we're going to look towards Diwali and the Interfaith Week and celebrating that festival. So okay, until then I will see you. Okay, bye bye.